Sometimes people hold on tightly to something, not because it's precious or beautiful, but because in a way it's familiar. Like holding a stone in your hand, not because the stone is valuable, but because you held it for so long, your fingers don't quite know how to let go. When you imagine that, it's fascinating how the mind has its own reasons, its own stories, its own way of keeping you safe. Even if that safety feels heavy, like an old coat that used to keep you warm, but now it's far too heavy for this kind of weather, and yet you're still wearing it. Strange, isn't it? But the mind is always trying to protect you, isn't it? Sometimes in ways that used to make sense, and yet maybe now they don't quite fit so well. Maybe they've become old habits, patterns that once helped you, but now keep you stuck. And that's okay, because the very fact that you're noticing this means something is already shifting. And it's funny, isn't it, how the mind can believe that by not trying, you're safe from failing, or by pushing others away, you'll never feel the sting of rejection. That if you just hold on to the past, those old stories, they'll somehow keep the future from sneaking up on you. It's almost like building a wall to protect yourself, but realizing the wall keeps you locked inside as well. There's a part of you, a deeper part, that knows something very interesting. What protected you in the past isn't the protection you need now, because you learned. Oh, you learned so well. You mastered survival. You've become so good at keeping yourself from being hurt, leaving the thought of letting go of old patterns. Well, it's like stepping out into light after being in the dark for so long. At first, it's almost too bright, too much, but then, slowly, you begin to adjust. And maybe, just maybe, you begin to notice how good it feels to let that old weight slip away, because you can let go of the idea that holding on keeps you safe, of the belief that pushing people away protects you, of the story that not trying is the same as not failing. Strange, isn't it? The stories we tell ourselves, but stories they're meant to change. And the most powerful thing about a story is, in one moment, one choice, you can write a new chapter. And if your unconscious mind were to discover now that it always had a choice, I wonder what it might choose. Maybe you would start to see those old patterns not as projection, but as reminders. Reminders that you survived, you made it through. And because you made it through, you don't need to live in survival anymore. It's time to thrive. Imagine just for a moment what it feels like to breathe deeply and to realize that every breath is a step into that new story. And as you breathe, you can feel how that safety, that real safety, comes from something much stronger. It's not avoiding failure. It's in realizing you're strong enough to rise again. It's not in keeping others out. It's in knowing you're worthy of connection. It's not in clinging to the past. It's in trusting the future to unfold in ways you can handle. And now, as these words begin to settle, your mind already knows how to integrate what's useful. It always has, because really, the truth has been there all along. It's the stone you've been holding. And you can set it down now. You don't need it anymore. You're safe. You're free. And there's something beautiful waiting, just at the other side of letting go. And you might already begin to notice how change, real change, it isn't about fighting with the past or struggling with old patterns. It's about realizing you no longer have to live by the rules created by those old patterns. Those old stories, clever, protective stories, they once whispered to you, stay small, stay safe. Don't risk too much. And maybe for a time you believed them. Of course you did. Because back then, they were the best strategies you had. They helped you survive, didn't they? But survival, it isn't enough anymore, is it? You were made for more than just surviving. There's a deeper part of you that already knows this. That part of you that remembers what it feels like to dream big, to trust again, to step into a life with both feet instead of tiptoeing around the edges. Because life was never meant to be something that you watch from a distance, afraid to jump in. It's time to realize pushing people away doesn't actually protect you. In fact, it's funny how the very act of keeping others at arm's length only makes you feel more alone. And there's something fascinating that happens when you think about it now. What if, just what if, letting others in is actually the safest thing you can do? Because real strength isn't in the walls or armour. It's in knowing no matter what happens, you'll be okay. And you will. You always have been, haven't you? And isn't it interesting how the belief that not trying keeps you from failing? Just another story, a story that can be rewritten. Because here's the truth, an undeniable truth. Failure, it isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. It's how you grow, how you learn, how you rise again and again, stronger each time. And you can feel it, can't you? That deep knowing stirring within you. The part of you that's ready to let go of holding back, because you're never really protecting yourself from failure. You're only protecting yourself from your own greatness, your own power, your own freedom. And freedom, well, freedom begins the moment you choose it. Not later. Not when things feel safe. Not when everything feels perfectly lined up. It begins now. And if your unconscious mind were to begin discovering that freedom right now, in this moment, I wonder how it begin to feel. Perhaps lighter, perhaps clearer. Perhaps like that moment when you take a deep breath and suddenly the weight you've been carrying feels smaller, manageable. Or maybe it even feels like it's starting to fade away altogether. Because holding on to the past, that doesn't protect you from the future. It only ties you to something that's already gone. And isn't it wonderful to realise the past isn't something you have to keep holding on to. It can be something that you thank and release because it served its purpose and now it's time for something new. Imagine that. Imagine standing on the edge of something new, something exciting, something entirely yours to create, without the old fears holding you back. Because those fears, well, they don't mean you should stop. They mean you're about to grow. They mean something big is on the horizon. And as you let those ideas settle in, as your unconscious mind plays with them, reshaping old patterns into something stronger, something more aligned with who you truly are, you begin to realise you've always been enough. Always. Even when you doubted. Even when you felt small. Even when you held on too tightly, or pushed too hard, or hid from the world. Because every part of you has always been moving forward towards this moment, this realization, this freedom. And now something clicks into place. A new belief begins to grow. A belief that whispers gently, I'm safe in my strength. I'm free to connect. I'm free to try, to succeed, to grow, and even to fall. Because falling isn't failing, it's flying, it's soaring, it's life unfolding. And from this moment forward, these new patterns, they become more and more natural, like stepping into a pair of shoes that fit perfectly, or hearing a song that feels like it's just written for you. And every breath you take from now on, it reminds you of this truth. You're free, you're strong, you're enough. And the best part, you always have been.